the Dauntless. When he was off the clock, he let out a sigh of satisfaction. Everything was caught up, no new fires to put out, and no screaming idiot demanding his attention due to soldier so-and-so refusing her precious granddaughter's advancement because he was on the job and being a professional. He leaves his office with a satisfied smile after putting the rest of the paperwork in order and undoes the top button of his uniform. He can breathe a little more easily, and the first thing he goes for when leaving the room is the coffee machine, even as his secretaries are switching over for the next shift. Granted, the next 2 shifts are just around to make sure that anything that comes up is properly classified and filed so he can deal with it on his own time. It's considered the easier shift, and its comparable calmness can make up for the terrible hours. More of the stressed paper pushers, intelligence officers, and legal teams use those 2 shifts as a chance to unwind, as the work is very simple, and it's otherwise just time to yourself with a little direction to keep you mildly busy. A good way to decompress while still feeling useful. He sips at the coffee a little before drinking it wholeheartedly. It's at just the right temperature for gulping, and while it's a little more on the side of the placebo effect at the moment, he can feel the energy return. Thankfully, before the placebo effect can wear off, the coffee will actually hit his system. He makes his way through the ship, and before he's even halfway to the exit, a tiny green form hugs him from around a corner. It's Ambassador Tal, dressed in what most of the galaxy would consider formal work clothes and what humans call a fetish outfit of white lace that's barely legal to be seen in public in. "Full day?" she asks him. "Oh yes. To use a human saying, it's like herding cats. If the cats were also capable of outright space magic and were curious to the point of madness," he says, crouching down to her level, and she kisses him on the cheek. "You're going to be okay. These men trust you." "Maybe, but I'm more babysitter than commanding officer sometimes. How about your day? Not as stressful, I hope?" he asks, and the full body sigh from Nikti lets him know that it indeed was very stressful. He outright picks her up, and she hugs him tight even as he straightens up. She cuddles into his side. "That bad?" he asks, and she stiffens before relaxing at his scent. "Oh yes, I've had to deal with accusations of all sorts, some relating to you, some of them relating to Brule, and some because some idiot seems to think that because I'm one of the few Gobi ambassadors that all Gobes must answer to me and therefore be my responsibility, even if the Gobi in question has never been in a dozen light years of Brule. Good Lord, I have a hard enough time dealing with my own business. I can scarcely imagine the problems if I was suddenly responsible for every vaguely human-looking bit of nonsense." "Yeah," she says before taking a deep breath and hugging him even tighter. "I needed my big human to hold and squeeze. Well, here I am. I think we should retire somewhere where the couches are plush and the eyes on us are few." "Yes, please," Nikti says, and he chuckles before heading for his personal chambers. He had initially been heading out to see her, or Lady Tycan Ped. If one of them came to him, then they needed him more than the other way around. A few minutes later, they're both reclined on a large couch in his personal quarters. Of course, he's on the couch and she is on him. Not that he has anything to complain about, soft alien booty in his lap. He hadn't let the crew know he was doing it personally yet, but he had cracked a method of self-rejuvenation that lets him keep his obvious seasoning despite growing younger internally. His occasional gout flare-ups were gone like the ulcers, and the increasing feeling of his joints rusting over had been wiped away. Side effects included increased libido, however. Thankfully, despite clearly feeling his appreciation for her current position, Nikti is happy to just cuddle up, which is good for him, as he's still slowly working through his personal issues and really isn't ready to be a father again until he's absolutely sure his sons are all right. Apparently, being the big responsible anchor that insists on things going all right is more than a little attractive to both Nikti and Jacqueline, mostly because Both girls could get randomly overworked, and bringing a child into that out of nowhere? Not ready. Not ready at all. Not that either had been comfortable admitting it, as if it were some admittance of weakness, which in many cultures it was. In far too much of the galaxy, women were expected to become part of a family early and have their first child well before 30. It was a human pace for races that could easily live past a human's lifetime, a holdover from evolution, which meant that there were rumors going around about any politician that didn't have things together, such as Nikti or Jacqueline, but now they could easily pass it off as something from him, and with his standard being well known, it went from scandalous to adorable in the public consensus, which was a fair amount of stress off both women and himself, as it would be crass as to push him. "How did I get this lucky?" Nikti asks after a while, and he chuckles. "What's so funny?" "I've asked that a few times myself." "Karma, after dealing with that Linda character?" Nikti asks, and he involuntarily tenses up a little at the thought of his ex-wife. The reason he's so uncomfortable with earning money through litigation. You tend to be cautious around weapons that have marked you. "Let's not bring her up. We're nice and relaxed." He begins and then pauses before looking around. Murphy's Law isn't a real law of physics. Nikti chides him with a very amused tone. "I've been in the military long enough to know otherwise." He counters, and she giggles into his chest. "Maybe we should focus more on how you're regaining youthful energy if you've got that much stress in you. It'll knock some worries off the top for both of us." Nikti offers, standing up and making a point of ensuring that her feet are planted off his thighs. Nothing would kill the possible sexy time than accidentally hurting him. "Really?" "Well, if you insist on..." He responds, leaning in just as his communicator goes off. This is his work phone. It only comes up if there's something that needs his immediate attention. "Damn you, Murphy. You do make a good case for his existence. Damnable dark god." She curses slightly as she sits down. He flashes her a rueful smile, and she waves him on. "The job comes first. That's the cost of being in charge. It's always your fault and always your problem." "Admiral Cistern here," he answers, all business despite the 3-foot 8-inch bombshell in his lap. "Sir, sorry for the interruption, however, we've run up against an issue. A more hostile gathering we were running countermeasures on had already been infiltrated by several police officers setting up a sting, and our right of self-defense is clashing with jurisdiction. The local commissioner is furious and making a huge number of threats." "Damn it," he curses before thinking fast. Wait, he has a plan for this. "All right, I've actually been ready for something like this. Tell Sir Philip to initiate contingency nighttime." "Nighttime, sir?" It was something that the Nerd Squad initially theorized, and then with Sir Philip's and my own suggestions, they refined it from an idiot argument about their entertainment to a practical contingency, one we will be putting to use here and now. "Yes, sir, on it." Jesus Christ, this man thinks of everything. The second bit is a bit softer, as if he pulled away the communicator to try and think for a moment. "You're still on the line, soldier." "Sir, sorry, sir," the soldier says before hanging up properly. "Contingency nighttime?" Nikti asks, and he chuckles. "Contingency nighttime." He corrects the phonetically accurate statement with an emphasis that confuses her. The fact that the contingency name is in English instead of Galactic Trade is not helping the conversation. Well, it's not helping facilitate the conversation, but it is lightly amusing the Admiral. It began as a debate about the antics of a costume vigilante from popular media. Perhaps the costume vigilante from popular media. Regardless, it contained many practical elements and was all about how this man with a clear moral code who works outside the law could work with the law. Oh, not what I was expecting. What were you expecting? Not that? I see. Well, the main part of the plan is to make an assessment of the officers, in this case, the commissioner of the spire in question, and informing them of our activities in a manner they can work with without turning against us. Much of it depends on the officer in question. There's a sliding scale to how much they can be brought into the fold with how much we can trust them. If they just follow that, then they should have a good measure of dealing with her. So, it's just a measure on how to trust people when caught in a compromising position. Official policy for more unusual activities. Of course, using one's good judgment is a big part of it, which is probably why it never happened in popular media. What? Well, can you expect good judgment from someone whose reaction to witnessing the death of their parents is to put on animal-themed costumes and start having fistfights with common thugs? He asks, and Nikti starts outright laughing at the thought. Exactly. Hey, Nikti says, after a few minutes just being together. Yes? We didn't get that kiss, she says coyly as she rises up again. That's just unfair, don't you think? Very. He answers, and she leans into him and their lips meet. After the first taste, her eyes flutter as the pheromones quickly hit, and she goes for more, quickly wrapping her tongue in his and moaning into the delightful warmth that overtakes her. His strong arms reach around and pull her close, and she coos in delight before going for more kisses. The door opens, and there's a soft chuckle as Lady Tycanped enters. I see that you two are taking a load off, she says softly as she walks in. There's a slight stretch, and soon she's on the couch next to Admiral Cistern and cuddling up against him. I had to deal with 4 different people trying to get me to change the orders of affairs, concurrently, and juggle the conversation to avoid accusations of corruption. Isn't it Proctor Erzsébet that deals with the order of affairs? Nikti asks, and Jacqueline nods. Indeed, but everyone's forgotten that she's my co-worker and not my direct subordinate. She notes before stretching. If I were to accommodate any of those women, I'd have to call in a favor Erzsébet owes me, and no one was offering anything that valuable. So we've all had an interesting day, Admiral Cistern notes as he imagines trying to politely turn down 4 people at the same time and not offend any of them. It doesn't look easy. Oh, that was just the start of it. Thankfully, a few people were more easily dealt with than others, so I was able to spend time with the less troublesome individuals and use them to eat up the minutes that the more obstinate would drag into hours if they could, she says, before smiling and grabbing at Admiral Cistern's shoulders. Now come here. I want you good and close. Nikti giggles as Lady Tycanped tries to cuddle Admiral Cistern in the way she is cuddled by him. Considering the two are much closer in size, it's a little awkward, and she gives up before just cuddling close, leaning over for a kiss. So, anything entertaining since we finished with our council meeting? She asks. I've discovered that there's a group trying to breed in the greatest warriors possible eyeing up my men. Oh goodness. There's also the fact that I walked in on several of my soldiers undergoing a formal Armenta-style duel, but with an anti-element. How does that even work? Nikti asks. She's not surprised, he's only speaking at length now. He's told both of them he hates repeating himself, so he saves the stories for when everyone's around. Well, testing the balance is the Armenta traditional dueling style. But what is an anti-element? Lady Tycanped asks. In this case, the element was wind and they reversed it with a hard vacuum. So there was a space of hard vacuum between 2 men and they were trying to force it into the other man. Yes. How have your soldiers survived this long? Lady Tycanped asks in a slightly stunned tone. We're a lot tougher than we look. He answers with no small amount of amusement in his voice.